Hello and welcome to Hot Topics and our discussion today on the anatomy of a great tech leader. So I'm going to kick it out there with the first question. What do you think makes a great tech leader today? Qualities, skill sets, experience, education, it could be anything. Who wants to jump in? And actually, Sarah, you work with a lot of tech leaders, right?
Yeah.
So you have a very good insight into their qualities and maybe qualities that they aspire to. So just to put it in context.
So I was a tech leader for a long time myself. And now, as you say, I work with tech leaders every day. And the things that I see that really make the difference today, and I think in the future as well, are those people that can actually connect with people, because it is so important that we can enable people to be the best form of themselves to enable the technology. And that really is where we need to go. We've got all the technology around us, I think, and we can develop all the technology that we need to solve the problems. But now it's about actually leveraging people. And so we need tech leaders who are able to actually do that, who are able to really ignite people, because we've got 20% engagement globally. So if we could get to 50, 60, 70, 80% engagement, and Gallup says this quite clearly, they always say, what are we missing? It's good leaders.
And why is that? Is that because tech for so long was so siloed and it had a different kind of makeup of people, whereas now tech is so much more embedded in every part of a business?
Yeah, tech's kind of grown in terms of it's in everywhere. So we need leaders that can really create the environment for really diverse teams to thrive. And this is really growing each and every day. And it's, there's not one solution. I'm sure we'll come on to this. There's not one size fits all, but we've got to, each of us, work out what we stand for, take the courage to be that person, to take a stand for something very clearly, and then work in the context and the team, because that's constantly changing, and then work out how we can contribute and leverage the skills and the strengths and allow other people to contribute, so maximize other people's contribution. And that's the heart of leadership. And what we've seen in the last maybe 20 years is a lot of, especially corporates, have gone through of promoting people who are independently high achievers, but that doesn't necessarily make them good leaders. And now we've got this kind of gap between what we need as leaders to be able to enable technology and what we have as leaders. And I think businesses are beginning to recognize they need to create more inclusivity, but also create a leadership strategy. What do we stand for? Play to the values of the business, because quite often what's happening is, the values that are being lived in the business are very different to actually what the values are that they're marketing or talking about.
Natalie,
yeah, absolutely. I'm nodding away because that's really, really right. And so I'm a headhunter, right? I recruit senior tech leaders, and I talk to board members about what they're looking for in a tech leader. You know, what traits are they looking for? What skills and experience? Absolutely, I think it's changed a lot, particularly recently, around collaboration, ability to engage, ability to understand, ability to say yes instead of no and block everything and facilitate. Or if you are saying no for valid reasons, to say, however, you can do it like this, or tell me what the problem is and I'll come up with a solution for you. So it's that real listening, understanding, collaborating, immersing yourself in different parts of the business. Some other new things that people are bringing out more and more, because of course it's always about credibility and knowledge and experience and all of that sort of stuff. But some other new things, low ego. Okay, if you're walking in and swaggering about, and it's almost that servant leader. A lot of CIOs and CTOs say to me, I'm a business enabler, but some of them really are, but some of them are a bit more, I don't know, sort of swaggering around. And I think it's low ego. The other thing people are saying to me, board members are saying to me, more recently, and I think this is, post-pandemic, or all of the issues that we've had, where we're really valuing our work and our life and our health and all of this sort of stuff. And we want to spend our lives doing great things rather than, feeling like we're slogging away and sort of not liking our work. So the other thing that boards are saying is, I really want you to make sure they're a nice person. And what they mean is we want to enjoy working with this person. And it kind of goes in with the ego as well. If they're going to come in with their ego and sort of bossing people about, rubbing people up the wrong way, and, please can you vet that they're just nice people that we want to work with. And a couple of other things, which I think we'll probably come on to, but commerciality is really big at the moment, much more than, are you keeping the lights on and making technology?
Is that much bigger than it used to be?
I think technology leaders have gone on a journey, haven't they, from being very back office. I mean, I started recruiting technology leaders about 20 years ago, so I'm showing my age, but I think they've gone from being very back office to being much more now about, particularly if you're in that C-suite, around how we're reaching new markets, how we bring out new products, how we're getting revenue from our tech, really thinking about being 50% business leader and 50% tech leader. And, I'm sure we'll all agree.
That's a big shift, because that wasn't the role before, was it?
Absolutely. And I think lots of people, therefore, are saying to me as candidates, I'm really commercial and I'm really innovative, because innovation is another thing they want to know about. But when you check behind the scenes and you're interviewing and you're finding that evidence as a headhunter, sometimes it's not quite there.
Yeah. Let's bring in Phil, because Phil, this is also an area that you work in. You focus on tech leadership. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I don't think the qualities of a tech leader are any different than the qualities of any other type of leader. I guess what we're discussing is that the role of the IT leader or the technology leader has changed, and there's more emphasis on them being a better all-rounded leader. So I think that's an important thing to remember. But in terms of adding to the points that have already been made, I think the leader needs to be curious and being open to exploring new ideas. And as we said earlier, doing that collaboratively with the organization. They also need to be changeable, and that's about driving and adapting to change within the organization, and actually bringing the value of technology through to the fore through that collaboration with peers across the organization, and understanding what different aspects of the business needs. And I know we talked about empathy. I think as a leader, they also need to build confidence. And that's confidence in their team, but also confidence in that technology can deliver as well.
Okay, thank you. Giles?
Well, I am a tech leader, so everything that everyone's saying, hopefully I'm doing. But I will start with the fact that 25 years ago, I think you said technology is everywhere now. Technology was a back office piece, as you said, and we were often hidden away in cupboards, basements, and other places in organisations. And we weren't allowed to come out and see the light. We didn't. We never talked to the rest of the business. No. There was no engagement with the rest of the business to understand how the business is actually utilising the software we're creating in the same way that, we create that today. Today everything's about customer value, business value. Delighting the customer is our number one focus, number one goal. But genuinely, I spent the early part of my career, first 10, 15 years, just locked away, hidden from the rest of the organisation. Until suddenly he sort of came out, saw the light, and got a bit of a tan and whatever. Seriously, and then all of a sudden, the world started changing. The early 2000s, people started changing. Leadership styles started changing as well. But I would only say it's been in the last 10, 15 years where really there's been a fundamental shift in style of a tech leader. I had some really awful leaders, and I'm not going to name any, but they were very command and control, very micromanagement, lots of bureaucracy. They would walk into the room and sort of, I think you sort of said, this air of importance, and the room would go quiet, and the CIO's coming, the CTO's coming, so we better not say anything. If you've got your tie on right and everything, I mean, software engineers with ties and shirts on, it's nonsensical, right? So from that perspective, a lot had to change. And I still remember, we were talking about it to some people earlier, I remember going into 2 or 3 organizations and very early on saying, right, Monday, don't come in with a shirt and tie. It's T-shirts and jeans. And any grief you get from it, leave that with me. I'll go and talk to the CEO or the head of HR and tell them, mindsets are changing. Our attitude to the workplace is changing. And this was over 10 years ago, we were starting this change. Today, it's the norm.
Yeah.
Today, technology is the heartbeat of every modern organization, wherever you go. Look at the top 10, 20 businesses in the world. They're all underpinned by incredible technology. And they need people who've got that empathy, who've got that apathy, who are liked by the people they're working with as well.
But then here's an interesting point. Have people who work in tech evolved as well? Because, what you described before, that's true. We've all seen the tech geeks in their little office that no one really interacted with. But now the IT crowd. It's a very different role as well. So have they evolved as well? Or do you still have many of the software engineers who really are coding and don't really want to communicate with anyone?
There probably are. But I think, again, mindsets have shifted even for the people in those teams. Today, a fundamental part of a tech leader's role is coaching. And it's bringing those people on that journey as well. You want to make them the next generation of best technical leaders. So for me, my goal is very simple. I want to empower people so that in 10, 20, 30 years' time, the people that have been part of my teams, my families, as I like to call them, are the next generation of technical leaders who genuinely will have removed bureaucracy, command and control, micromanagement, will be doing things in a different mindset and a different style, where they're really bought in and engaged to the mission and the vision of a particular business they're part of, that culture as well. But they're now bringing it and improving it. I would love to see in 20, 30 years' time what the anatomy of a technical leader is, because I can tell you it's going to be vastly different from today, and I hope it is.
Do you think the younger generation also have a different approach to tech?
Yes, I think, children, even small children now, instantly picking up parents' iPhones and iPads and other things, know how to swipe and unlock it, know how to do the apps. Their thumb is moving all the way across their phone and they're swiping up
digital
and left.
Native.
Exactly, digital native. And they're born like that these days. So by the time that they're in the workplace, there's kind of this near enough need that they are supported with that tools, those infrastructure pieces as well, so that they can do their job in the same way. When I first started work, I'm not going to say how long ago that was, but there wasn't even email. So that's how long ago things have, and since then have evolved.
Yeah,
and I hope it continues to evolve.
Yeah, we haven't heard from you. Your thoughts on anything to add to this?
Yeah, I think there are a few things, right? The first thing is the transformation of the role of tech leaders is actually driven by the change, the way how the technology was adopted. If you think about 20 years ago, the whole enterprise, we call it enterprise IT organization, pretty much busy with, ERP implementation. Often the project takes ages, 2 years, 3 years. It was slow. The way how it worked, there's a user requirement gathering, then move to development, and development moved to implementation. That was a typical way how the project was delivered. But with rapid technology transformation, the way it worked is so different. Think about agile development. Because that tremendously changed the way the technology organization engage with the whole team, the business team. So now you have agile team that release new features on weekly basis or daily basis. Then the interaction with the business, it's regular, right? It's not like I say there are just code, but it's so different that it requires very different skill sets. It requires not just the technology leader, but also the whole organization understand the business processes, understand what business problem we're solving. So that is the driver behind the scenes. So basically, if you say a technology leader, first he or she must be a business leader, understand the business even better than marketing folks, than procurement, than HR. We have the domain knowledge. In fact, I think technology leaders are in the unique situation to understand the business processes in the organization. I think the second one is actually learning agility. 20 years ago, if you look at people work on mainframe, people on the large system, but nowadays with the technology transformation, it's almost on weekly basis. You see the new technology coming on weekly basis. So we have to keep up the pace of the change. That'll be the second one. The third one is actually, I would say, humility. Basically,
Which ties into ego as well,
don't think about yourself big. I'm a big boss of the whole system and other people around. Think about yourself, how you create that humane environment so that everybody can be the best of themselves.
Just to be devil's advocate, do you need some element of ego? I'm just thinking of these are extreme examples, but the Steve Jobs and the Bill Gates, because you need to have a bit of that to have those standards, or to not make people scared, but make people want to work hard or make people impressed, or is that not a thing at all?
I wouldn't call it ego. I call it vision. Yeah, I think ego and vision are two things, right? So, Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, and other folks, they all have a big vision. So I think that's started with the vision. In fact, I would say the technology leader shouldn't be the order taker of the business leaders, which is that I want to call out. I think the true technology leader is able to shape the conversation with the board, to shape the conversation with the leadership team. That often requires selling skills.
Yeah.
So we are the salespeople to sell the technology to the organization. So we're not order taker just doing whatever the business requirements told us to do. So that's fundamental difference. In fact, I would say one of the leadership quality is of the tech leaders is being bold and visionary enough.
Confidence. There's a difference between confidence and arrogance.
Yeah.
So it's that fine line, isn't it? And I think just a point on all of this, the reason that so many technology leaders are on the C-suite now is because of all this stuff, right? It's fundamental to the business. Many businesses, even if they're not tech businesses, are calling themselves tech businesses now, even if they're not. They were traditionally.
They say all banks are essentially, tech companies that deal in finance. It's happening across the board. Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that point, if that's okay. The word I was going to use is courage. And what I mean by that is that they have courage in their convictions. They, define a set of principles that they believe in, and they stick by them. And that becomes the essence of who they are as a leader.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Sarah, I was going to ask you, in your line of work, what do people come and say? Do they know where their gaps are or what is missing? Or do you identify those gaps? And what are the most common ones that you see?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think most people know they've got gaps, and I think we've heard this humility of the fact we're in this constant change means that actually anyone who is in this space recognizes that they also need to be changing. And as humans, we don't naturally go into places of discomfort. So it does need someone generally from the outside to be able to reflect back as to what you're hearing and what that might be, or how that might be showing up in the business. So creating that space to have that conversation. So like I said, generally it's yes, I recognize there's somewhere I need to grow, because if I don't grow, I'm going to be outdated. I can't fulfill the needs of the business. Most people struggle to identify where that gap is. And I quite often say, I don't think anyone gets out of bed in the morning and wants to do their job badly, but they can do it a hell of a lot better. And the same for me. I can't see my own blind spots. And creating this space, and this is part of what leadership and coaching is about, is creating a space to help others see their blind spots, creating a space to have these difficult conversations, to be confronted. But you need to have that space, and that is what the leadership is about, creating the space that people can feel vulnerable, they can be challenged, because that's where innovation happens. When they can really talk about what's important, and be that in a coaching setup where they're coming to me and having a conversation, or be that in the business where you sit a leadership team down together and actually have some really brave conversations about, are we doing the right thing? How can we work better together? Why is that important? What value are we trying to bring out? Those are the conversations. I think we heard it in the last discussion as well. How do we contribute? How do we bring value? What's the reason for doing this? And how will that lead towards the business purpose and what we're actually trying to achieve?
So let's move the conversation on a bit. As the tech leader becomes more of a business leader, how close should they be to the tech and the IT function as a whole? And to what degree do they need to elevate and upskill the IT function?
20 years ago, the IT function was called IT, but nowadays, many organizations, they don't call themselves IT. My team is IT, but we call ourselves digital technology. So then you see the word digital, right? So because we call digital technology for a reason. That's why. I think there has been a huge change in terms of the requirement and the quality of the whole IT organization. The first one is the quick learning speed. So because we are IT, and people have to understand how they can learn the new technology and solutions. The second one is really back to the business domain knowledge. I remember 10 years ago, I was leading a large IT organization, and the team was implementing a customer relation management system. So the first question I asked the team is, have you visited any customer this month? So that says a lot. And
what was the
people
answer?
told me
No.
The people said no. Or we were busy with developing the CRM. We have to, do the enhancement, and we have to do this. I said, please stop it and then visit the largest customer and just listen to them, what they say about our company, about our service, about our sales. That will make tremendous difference. I think the second one, back to this point, is around understanding who is the true customer. What is the product and services of the company? So it's not about fulfill the internal requirement of the users. Yes, it is, but fulfill the vision of a company to add value. And the third one is really the soft skill. What I find because people, most of typical IT profile is people study computer science in school or engineering, and they didn't have to interact with people, right? So when it came to the environment where they need to talk to people, they use a quite different language. They talk about, I just do this enhancement and, blah, blah, blah. But they need to understand that they have to interact with human. They have to interact with the real users, people. So the soft skill is quite important.
Yeah.
Number 4 is selling, storytelling. So I think this is the skill sets where a lot of people were missing in the IT organization because they didn't have to do this in their old jobs. But in the new environment, everybody has to learn how to sell the solutions they develop to their users and the customers and to the customers. So I would say those are the 4 key skill sets required by the new technology organization.
Yeah.
And it's hard, isn't it? Because as you come up that, as you go through that career journey, and you might start in an area of tech, or you might not even start in tech. Particularly women in technology don't necessarily start in tech because STEM, they don't take STEM subjects. They might get involved in a tech project as part of marketing or HR, and the tech leader goes, wow, you're awesome, and you've got really good EQ, and you can talk to the business, please can you come into technology, right? But you're coming up through this journey, and at some point you've got to get that breadth of technology experience to be able to be the technology leader, whether that's CIO, CTO, CDO, whatever we're calling it, to your point, digital technology rather than IT. But then there comes a point where you're, as we were discussing earlier, half business, half tech, and all of a sudden, I think someone said this in the last panel actually, I'm not doing the tech anymore.
Yeah.
I'm orchestrating everyone else doing the tech, and what I've got to do is lift my head up and understand the direction of travel for the business, what's going on in the industry, what's going on in our competitors, what innovation's coming around the corner. It's actually a really difficult thing to transition from being in the tech to going
above
up
the tech
and thinking strategically.
So, Natalie, when you're at that point, then how close do you stay to the tech and the IT function? How do you manage that transition?
Well, I think you have to stay close to it, but you're asking slightly different questions and you're doing slightly different things with your team. So you have to have the right leaders in place and you have to have clear objectives and clear accountabilities for them and empower them themselves to lift up a little bit. Because if they can't do that, it doesn't allow you to lift up and out. And I think sometimes, depending on your personality, you can get too involved in the detail. We've all done it, and it takes that real discipline, particularly when you're at a certain age in life as well, and you're a little bit, stuck in your ways to go, I'm not going to be looking down and controlling and you know, meddling anymore. I need to empower, set objectives, hold people to account, lift myself up, have really good leaders, good succession plans, and allow myself to understand what my objectives are from the board, understand what the business direction of travel is, and also, to your point earlier, Miao, is help the business with their objectives, because they might not know how tech can help their business to go forward and to reach new markets and new audiences and customers and so forth.
Very good point, really good point. Giles, I know you want to say something,
Yeah.
but I also want to ask you, in your career, have you reached that point where you know, to Natalie's point, you've come to that point where you're sort of not involved, you're more on the business side, and how have you, Matt? No, okay.
No, that's yeah. I mean, I still sit and tinker away with Raspberry Pis and things like that and geek out at home quite happily, you know, coding away. So I'm still there, but
Okay.
nothing like the teams today. For me, I think there's one step even further from what obviously everyone said. I don't like this idea of separation of technology and business. We are the business. We're
Yes.
one business, right? So I try and sort of put that mindset into everybody that, you know, I'm either coaching. It comes back to that coaching and mentoring, this mindset, bringing these people, sort of giving them a better position within the organization. And therefore, in the business, it's not they're just doing their role in the technology team as part of the business. They are still a major contributor to the overall success of the business. So for me, it's about giving those people who are in those technology teams, those engineering teams, digital teams, to give them as much autonomy, purpose, to give them that sort of, I suppose, authority as well. They're the closest people to the customer. They're a lot closer to the customer than we are, because they're building those products that are about to go straight into the hands of the customer on that customer journey. So I want to empower them to actually, try things out, experiment, fail, and then sort of, you know, pick themselves up, learn from those failures, and then obviously do new things as well. And that comes back to that thing I said earlier about technology leaders also now sort of having this coaching mindset to empower these people to actually just crack on and get stuff done. And that's this idea I love. And so that there isn't a differentiation between someone who's in the sales team and someone who's in the technology team. We're all one family. And I think I often say in the organization, no ego, not just even low ego. It's no ego. Forget your job title. We're all here to delight our customers, to make customer value and business value come together. They're two different things, but we've obviously got to do it and enable that the best way possible.
So does the onus maybe come onto the business to become more tech savvy, in the sense that people who work in tech, they understand how it can get the business to grow, but you quite often find, especially on the board, that there is a lack of understanding on tech. So does the onus come back to the other side?
I think so. I think it's our job to do that, but it's also our job to get the people from the digital and engineering side of the business more prominent and open within the rest of the organization. So I'm not going to use the word business or technology anymore. I'm going to talk about the organization as a whole. And with that being said, I think that there is an onus on, you know, the rest of the C-suite understanding what the technology elements of a business are actually doing, what they're achieving, how they're making our customers happy, you know, and delivering these digital applications which people need to use on a daily basis. You know, open your phone. Just think about the number of things that you use on a daily basis, right? And someone in a technology team somewhere has created them. And they've obviously wanted to invite the customer in as part of that participation for creating this. And you do not need all of the sort of C-suite involved in those levels of conversation. You want to empower the people who are creating it. Go and deal with the customer, talk to the customer, delight the customer, find out what they want. And we've got to do that.
Absolutely.
There's an additional point I'd like to make. I think it's important to have the CIOs, the CTOs, the most senior technology leader, to be sitting in the board or the executive committee or leadership team, because that makes tremendous difference.
But that's happening a lot more now, isn't it,
Agreed.
compared
Yeah, it
to
is.
in the past?
In some of organizations, they still report to CFO or COO. As soon as you report to your CFO, the focus will shift it, whether you like it or not, right? They focus on cost cutting, cost efficiency, etc. I think that's quite important. The other hand is, the other part is, I think it's the technology leader's job to educate the board, the whole organization on digital literacy. that is, often people forget that job, but it's important to educate them what is art of possible using a language where people can understand.
It comes back to curiosity, I think.
is,
Everything that we're talking about is, the fundamental skill is curiosity. Curiosity to learn, curiosity to not be right, curiosity to help collaborate and discover, using the skills that you've got around you.
Celebrate failure and success to learn from it.
Yeah, and that's both within the technology part of the organisation, but in the whole C-suite. And that's the important thing, that lack of ego, or the willingness to be wrong, to ask questions that might feel a little uncomfortable, but really about, being open to hearing all of the voices and learning always that we can do better, and challenging one another that we want to do better together.
I'm curious, in all of your careers, have you come across a tech leader who has been really impressive for you personally that you've worked with? And if so, I'm curious to know, what was that main quality that made them so impressive?
I have, and 10 years or so ago, I had a CTO, I wanted to aspire to be that next one. And day one, he literally just kind of let the reins go. I turned up and it was like, I thought I was just going to instantly sort of drown, but it was the best education, because he sort of had a fantastic way of sort of mentoring and coaching and guiding, and giving me enough rope to kind of nearly hang myself if I was going to go wrong, and slowly guide me back in as well if I was going to learn mistakes. But we turned around an organization that had gone from delivering 12 product releases to clients, customers in one 12-month period, to the next 12 months delivering 109, to the next year delivering 260, with the same number of staff in this. And it's just a mindset and an education and sort of better use of technology to do that. And he allowed me to do that and lead that as well in the business, which I can guarantee you, in any of the sort of the previous businesses I've been part of, there would have been some amount of command and control element there. No, don't do that. Do this. This is the way I've done it before, so you've got to do it this way as well. I wanted to learn. I wanted to experiment. There's all these things I'd wanted to try, and 8 out of 10 things worked, 2 out of 10 didn't. We learned from that, dusted ourselves off, picked ourselves up, and moved on. But so I've had that mentor, coach, and that's what I want to do now with the organisations I'm joining.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyone else had someone amazing? Because that's a very lucky experience to have. It doesn't happen all the time, does it?
I had someone, actually quite a few technology leaders. One example was he was doing a very big job in a large global company, managing $1 billion budget, but he was so down to earth. I think that the best thing he did is really enable the organization. I think back to your point about servant leadership, he actually empowered the whole organization to innovate effectively. So that's one example. The other one is actually, she had a technology background, but she actually became the CEO of a consumer company. So basically that means that there's an art of possible of career development of the technology leaders.
A leader who saw himself as an explorer, and they were taking the organization into a journey of the future. And their remit was to help the organization navigate the uncertainty of the future. So they saw themselves as that explorer, having all the characteristics that we thought around the curious mindset, around collaborating with the crew within the organization, the leaders across the organization, and developing the skills to help the organization navigate into that future uncertainty. An interesting analogy, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Something that's also would be really interesting to get your thoughts on. How do you stay relevant as a tech leader? Things are changing so quickly. As you get older, you have more experience, but then you also have to keep up with the increasingly fast pace of change. So how do you stay relevant, and how do you stay valuable to the organization at the same time? Yeah, Natalie, what's your experience been?
Well, I think the tech leaders are really, really, really relevant to organizations now, because tech is so fundamental to every single business. I think by really listening to the people in your teams as well about the ideas they have, because some people have been playing around with tech or involved with all sorts of stuff and might have all sorts of cool ideas. I think you have to, this is really interesting balancing act between wanting to pilot potentially some innovations, but needing that investment from the board to pilot innovation. But you're only going to really be truly keep being relevant if you're allowed to keep trying to stay ahead, or at least be a fast follower out there. And that will take really being able to tell that story to the leadership team around, if we can trial this, scale and fail, as you were saying, that's really good. And also immersing yourself in the business. Like, everyone thinks they're a tech specialist these days, right? That even I was having lunch with a chief exec a few weeks back. We recruited a global CIO and a European tech director for him. And he does not have a tech background, but he was talking about ChatGPT, and he'd had lunch with some peers or some friends. Was like, I want to know how this is going to be relevant for my business. Now, of course, that sort of technology isn't that new, but all of a sudden you have this thing that anyone can play with and experiment with. I wrote a poem about an octopus that was surfing, for example, right? I told it to do that for me. So, and now the board and the leadership, any leader wants to know about these bits of innovation that they've heard about, artificial intelligence, machine learning. How is this useful for my business? As a tech leader, if you don't find the time to talk to the board about that, to remain, because they're thinking that's relevant, right?
Yeah,
to your point about relevance, they're thinking, this is relevant for my business. Now, you as a tech leader might be going, oh, we're absolutely not ready for this yet. We haven't sorted our data out. We haven't sorted blah, 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 blah. But the board might not know that. So you therefore have to be, I'm one step ahead here. I know you'll have been hearing about these innovation, digital twins, IoT, or all these words that are bandied about. I know you're hearing about these. Let me carve out some time to bring these to life for you, to tell stories about them, to tell you what the use cases might be in our business and the journey we need to get there. Because before we can do that, we need to sort this, and this out.
Yeah.
That's the way to stay relevant. Yeah. It's tough.
So it's also to be the educator, really, and
the educator,
to do
the innovator.
Yeah.
Think like a futurist, really, and anticipate those future trends before they hit you, as you've said.
Yeah, but to your point, a CEO will think, but we're ready for machine learning, but why aren't we employing AI in our business? So it makes it much more challenging for tech leaders, doesn't it? Because the business is here, and for machine learning, they need to be there. So
I would say when you pilot, it has to be real use cases, which is very relevant of the whole organization. I actually did a GPT presentation to the board last Friday. As a result, there were follow-up questions. There was huge passion about the topic, but the use cases I presented is all business relevant to the company. So basically, how to improve efficiency in finance services, etc. All of this. But then the question is, are we ready? Right? It's a natural question, and then the conversation lead to the data quality, data security, how you do that in a secure environment. So that is natural conversation. The other point I like to make is it's quite important for the tech leaders to learn the real stuff, to be hands-on. Let's take ChatGPT as another example. How you actually adopt that into your own environment is pretty tricky. And we know the technology is not 100% ready. But then last week, I gave an example. Last week, my team had a learning session with Microsoft, because Microsoft basically incorporated GPT technology into their Azure OpenAI environment. But how you actually implement that into Azure OpenAI environment is a lot of tech stuff, right? So we had this sit-down session with Microsoft, and then I went to the session, with my team, because then I learned that, actually, it's not that simple. You need people who have, coding experience, who is familiar with GitHub to do that, professionally. So that is how I learned. I think the key thing is that we have to be, despite the technology leaders are the leadership position, they're the leaders, but there has to be a lot of learning through very hands-on. You think about yourself in this area as a student, right? You have that curiosity. Back to your point, you sit there to learn how this works in the whole environment, which is for me, is tremendously different than the old way of leading an organization. Because once you learn, then you encourage the whole team, the whole organization learn the new technology trend in the same way so that they can be hands-on. They can do the work, they can run the real pilot, adopt AI, machine learning, you name it, digital twins, blockchain, and create value, use the real business cases.
Yeah, I think this is really important and something you've just brought up. We've got to pull the silos down, and that's between businesses because we can learn from one another. And I think one of the key jobs in keeping ourselves or keeping relevant as a tech leader is also your network, who you know and who you're having these conversations with, to make sure that you're not just getting lost in your business and your technology, but you're able to see what other people are doing and hear some of the things that are exciting but also challenging.
Like HotTopics.
Yeah,
I was going to say the same thing. This is the relevance of this today is what's needed. We need more of these types of events to learn from one another, to share.
Challenge one another.
Exactly. And I think it's also the responsibility of the large tech firms like Amazon, Google, and other people to put on more events to actually bring that relevance to people and not just have the tech leaders going, but engineers going, other people in the business going along to understand whether it's about blockchain or IoT or this. I went to a Google event recently all about, the latest sort of technologies in Google Cloud. And it was great to actually learn about some of the new innovations they're bringing in. And if they don't do that, we don't remain relevant to somehow also bring that back to the organization, talk to the board, talk to the exco.
It's actually in their interest to bring everyone along, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, it's fun because listening to everyone else, it's like therapy for me because it's kind of, this is what I should be doing if I'm not doing it already in the organization. Hopefully I am. But we really do need to stay relevant. But by doing that, we also learn from the people internally in the organization. As I said, if we're coaching the engineers, even the people who've recently left university, they're going to come with ideas and mindsets which necessarily haven't been crafted by 25 years of working in an organization. They're going to come fresh. They've got new thinking, and we want to learn from them as much as I want to learn from my boss, the CEO, who also has fantastic ideas.
Yeah, and also from other founders. There's like the speed of changes is so fast now, and there are all these new businesses popping up, and they have the potential to really disrupt some of the bigger businesses if they don't integrate and learn from founders and also what they're doing. There's a massive opportunity to be able to be bringing in new technologies rather than creating everything within the business as well. And I think there's so much, again, it comes down to breaking down the silos and being able to talk to people that are, in NGOs or in a startup. And like you say, facilitating these kind of conversations on a much broader level to create opportunities to collaborate. And we need to get cleverer, I think, in the way we create partnerships within business or between businesses and with different people as well.
Absolutely. And on that note, I'm afraid we are out of time, but thank you all very much. Thank you very much to you, Phil, for joining us virtually. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.